Hip, hip.
I need the country. I need the country.
Meh. He's down.
I guess we want to go ahead and recap all of the 2022 season now that it's all officially over. It's been a little bit of a gap between like our last activity recording a story and where we are now. Is yesterday on just our little Instagram account, I kind of posted a thing, hey, the 2023 season's officially kicking off because we were out shed hunting, and it's really the first activity we've done since the end of the year.
Yeah, after kind of the season came and went here in Kansas, we didn't do a whole lot other than make sure the cameras were running and get some corn out occasionally if there was. We had a couple of real hard cold weeks. I guess it was end of the year and middle of January sometime in there. I don't remember exactly, but it's kind of rough time for a bit.
Yeah, well, and you say we didn't have a lot going on, but you traveled. We need to touch base at some point on you ending up in Vegas for a little while and that fun stuff. So you had some stuff that took your attention, and I had all the holidays and getting back into work and focusing on that sort of stuff. But
yeah, quote unquote focusing on work, but it's always weird. You get, particularly like you get into November and the rut's crazy and it's fun to be in the woods, but then after that, all the holidays hit. Thanksgiving hits. For some reason, the December's always crazy busy, and then you get the Christmas and the New Year's, and it's always so much happening there. But yeah, it was kind of a little lull in January a lot of times with the deer activity. But we need to go back and I guess talk about what's been happening the past couple of months.
yeah, I kind of want to back up real quick, just briefly, just recap kind of from the beginning of 2022 all the way up till now. I guess we talked about your deer and we'll get into that. But last year I think we put in maybe more effort than we ever have, trying to be strategic about some of the stuff we do. I tried to get in a little food plot early on. That kind of failed. We ended up getting some alfalfa planted in springtime, which also again kind of failed because we had so much weed pressure. But we were taking some steps to trying to get things in order because we've seen some fun things happen. And then we got some cameras put out and started capturing some velvet bucks. So it just progressed. We were just really excited. And I think on our preview of the season, we mentioned how optimistic we were. And that certainly carried into our hunting season to a certain degree. I still think it was the best season we've probably had on the farm, just how it all played out.
Yeah, well, and to me it kind of seems like it was one of the seasons where we went in where we felt like we had the most information, we had pretty good idea what bucks were going to be around. You're never always going to get surprised something, but felt like we'd come in with the most info and setting ourselves up for the best chance of something happening that just wasn't completely random.
Right.
So that was pretty cool, and a lot of that just comes from a little bit more diligence around the cameras, actually creating some deer food, some areas where we thought they'd be coming from and going to, and so that was interesting.
And that brought us up to our deer week. So the first week in November, like we talked about, I think on Darron's story, some of the deer that we were hoping to see disappeared, but one of them showed back up, and Darron made quick work of that. So that first evening you were up, took care of business on that one, and he got that buck he calls Scar, a great buck, and one that we definitely were targeting for this year. Now that left me an opportunity to basically hunt the whole remaining week that we had off, and try to pinpoint another buck. And there was only one. So leading up to fall, I think we had half a dozen different deer throughout the summer, velvet pictures that we would say were probably resident bucks that we were anxious to see how they moved around the farm. But all of a sudden we were left with two. I think it was mid-October that this nice 10-point showed up, and it's kind of funny. We're using these reveal cell cameras, and I think it was a new one. I think I picked up a brand new one and took it down to a little food plot that we had set up because we needed to see what was kind of coming into that area without messing stuff up. So I wanted a camera down there, so I put it down there and I went along the field edge. There weren't any real good spots to set it up. No rubs or scrapes really at that point. And so I went to the corner where this trail comes into the field, and I thought, well, I can set it up kind of near this trail and maybe catch something entering the field. Well, it was that night or 2 nights later, this 10-pointer that we hadn't actually had pictures of in velvet, but I think he was a deer from the year prior, shows up, and he comes directly over to that little cedar tree and starts raking it. And then Darron's deer, not long after that, gets fired up, and he comes in and rakes that tree. So we had to send Dad down there. I remember at work looking at the pictures that morning, of course on work break, 10 o'clock,
Obviously.
so first break, yeah. But I called Dad. I said, hey, can you just run down there to that field real quick and move that camera, because I don't want it getting ruined right away. And so he did, and so we had, now at that point, 2 shooters on the farm. So I think we felt like we needed to make some somewhat aggressive moves to try to get on both of those deer.
Yeah, and that spot that you're talking about where we set up and put that food plot in, there's a really great spot, and there's always deer down there. But for some reason, it is the hardest place to get a good stand placement and impossible to get in and out of without something seeing you, because the cover's not the best, and there's just so many places where deer could be coming into there from.
And the best cover to get in and out of there or to hide is in a bad wind situation.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, but it was neat because, at that point, by that time of the year, one of the bucks we were super excited to see, that double splits, just disappeared.
Yeah.
And Buell asked to know where, hopefully he'll show back up again. I don't know, but we were excited about him, but he left, and now all of a sudden this big 10 rolled in, and so we're excited to see that one too.
Yeah. And it was about that same time, I think you texted me, or we were talking, and you said, I think that's the broke G2 buck from last year, because you found his whole set of sheds. Yep. So you've got those at home, and they were found basically in that area. One side was in that field that he showed up again, and looked at the pictures, and I couldn't argue that anything different. The way he was acting, where he was moving, seemed to be the same as last year. So last year, that buck showed up. I got video of him on Thanksgiving Day, but I saw him a couple other times, and I think we saw him throughout the season multiple times. I didn't have any close encounters other than that Thanksgiving Day, and I don't remember what you saw of him, but we had him, I thought we kind of had him pinpointed with where you found his sheds and where I was seeing him go in and out of this area. I felt pretty confident in that. He
was one, and I know, so I let him walk early November, strolling through, and he was one of those, both you and I, it's like, oh, you see him coming, it's like, we'll probably pass on him because he's got a lot of potential, but watching him walk away is about the hardest thing ever. He's like, I might have messed that up, but he was definitely a resident there, so we weren't too afraid that he would move away, provided nothing happened to him. So I think we were comfortable in letting him walk, knowing what he might be. So
the remainder of 2021, we kind of tried to, I was kind of focused on a different deer. We just kind of tried to stay out of his way and let him settle in. That worked because Darron found his shed. So this year, he shows up. So we got these 2 bucks, and Darron tags out on the first night. So now we're left with basically 1 shooter. And I think I probably came across as frustrated most of the following week, and it's silly to say, yeah, I'm frustrated because I'm taking time off hunting, because that's an ideal situation. But when you look at how optimistic we were with what we had in the summertime, and now we're left with one option, and we were close to him that week. So there were some things happening. I think it was the morning after you shot yours, I went to one of the stands that's very productive for us. I'd say it's kind of our favorite stand. And I think, so rut activity was at a peak then, chasing anyway.
Yeah.
That morning before light, I had something chase in across from me in a little ravine, and it was too dark to see, but grunting and crashing around. I'm pretty sure it was that 10 point, because we were seeing, I would say maybe a little bit of a triangle pattern between a lower field, an upper field, and this other stand, kind of a triangle pattern there. And that buck had showed up on both of those so 2 out of those 3 spots early that morning.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe if you feel differently, but it almost seems like this year, the actual hard rut activity might have started just a little earlier, because by the time, we were out this first full week of November, didn't seem like there were a whole lot of bucks that weren't on does.
Right.
Seems like maybe in the years past, they're still searching quite a bit early November, but boy, they were on the does real hard this year. So it's either you were seeing everything or nothing at all, and it kind of depended on what the doe was doing. But
yeah, and that ultimately made for some really great action, but a lot of this was happening, an hour before shooting light.
Yeah.
And so that happened like the day after Darron tagged, and then it kind of dried up for a few days. It got a little bit warmer. The weather might not have been cooperating, and for whatever reason, we would get these pictures of this buck an hour after shooting light or an hour before shooting light. And so it really made it tough for us to access these areas. I didn't feel like we could push in real aggressive, but we had to stay within the general area, because it seemed real evident, like you were talking about, that he was on a doe.
Yeah.
And so we needed to get in there, but not bump him off the spot where he's getting his picture. So then you have to guess where he's going to go from one spot to another.
And it was tight enough, like I was still out here at the farm, and so I was waking up early. Some mornings I'd go look around, some mornings I'd just kind of stay in, but get up and check the camera, and like I would see, I know Derek's going in the stand, look at the camera close by, and he is there right then when Derek's driving out to the farm, or when you're driving out, and it's like, quick text or call you, hey, by the way, don't go in there, because he's there right now, and you'll bust him out. So then it's like, well, that's where we thought he was going to be, and he was there, but he was there just too early. So where do you go from there?
Yep. So that was the case. That first morning he was up, I think, where Darron shot his deer, and so to not push him out of there, I went to a different stand, and I'm pretty sure he pushed a doe. There was another buck in there, and I saw him. He kind of busted me, and I thought he was the big 8 that I was chasing last year, but now we got pictures of that deer I saw this year, and it was a younger 8, still a nice deer, but not quite the deer I thought it was. So that was an exciting morning. But then after daylight, nothing. It all settled in, and they went and hid out, and then it slowed down for a couple days. And again, we had some pictures in another area of the farm. I went to the west stand, and that was one move where we were a little more aggressive. Like, he's on that west end. If he's with a doe, it doesn't matter. We got to get in there.
Yeah.
And this was silly, because the way that stand is set up, it's a beautiful spot, but the easiest way to get in there, you have to walk in front of the camera, right kind of in the middle of the area where they're going to be.
Yeah.
And so that morning I thought, I'm going to sneak in the back door. The stand's right above this creek bank. It's a pretty steep one. And I felt like if I could get up to that bank, I can just shinny up it right under the tree and get up there. But I got all kinds of stuck up in the branches and tangled up, but I was too late to backtrack. So I finally made my way up, but it was kind of one of those magical mornings. As soon as I got in the stand, a young buck came by me and they were moving around there. So I knew there was good activity. And again, right at or before shooting light, grunting and chasing, I could hear them raking their horns, everything. And I'm 95% positive it was that Big 10 with his doe and chasing these other deer off. So now 2 mornings we were within 80 to 100 yards, probably closer than that, maybe 40 yards from this buck with his doe. So that felt good, but again, it was really frustrating that nothing in daylight. As soon as daylight rolled around, nothing.
And that particular stand is just money if they're chasing a hot doe through there, because of the way the landscape lays out, they have to come through in shooting range. I mean, there's not a whole lot of other options that they would naturally take. But the downside of that is you don't really see much else besides something when it's all of a sudden right on top of you. So it can be a pretty boring day if there's not something comes right on top of your lap. But
yeah,
that was a neat one.
So after 2 encounters, I'm supposing it was that deer, but really fast activity. I mean, what I was hearing was aggressive grunting, raking horns, and chasing. So now I'm getting in my mind a little bit. I'm like, they're moving fast. Like you alluded to, they're going to be close if they come by, but it's going to be fast.
Mm-hmm.
If they're on a doe and these other bucks are bothering, it's going to be a fast situation. So we kind of tried to play that game the rest of the week. I think, was there a rainy day or something, really warm and windy? I can't remember what was in the middle of the week, but it was really slow. And I kind of let up after that. But then toward the end of the week, the weather was going to get a lot better. I can't remember. It's leading up to a Saturday morning. I can't remember what happened like that Friday leading in.
I don't remember. I went back home on Friday.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if you...
Well, I know...
I would have to go look. But
I know a lot of the evenings I was hitting the knob where Darron shot his, because we're putting a lot of eggs in that basket because there was a giant scrape up there.
Mm-hmm.
I should probably just look back at the video. But there was a huge scrape up there that this 10-pointer was hitting. And I thought if he gets off his doe, he's going to be checking his scrapes again. Yeah. So I imagine I was up there Friday evening. But I remember texting a buddy from Texas. He was up here hunting a different part of the state. We text back and forth all through deer week. And I remember telling him, I don't know where to go. I'm just going to go to my favorite stand tomorrow morning. The weather's going to be good. That's what I'm going to do. And so that Saturday morning, really nice, crisp, cool morning like you like. And I just headed into this Deer Canyon stand. Deer Canyon is what we call it. Which
we have shot a pile of bucks chasing that area.
This is a stand. I'd sat on it a couple times already. The morning after Darron shot his, like I said, I was sitting on that stand and I saw some activity there. But the whole dynamic of that area had changed. We talked about the storms last summer destroying a bunch of trees and stuff, and it's actually nice and woolly now, but it really changed. There's not scrapes and rubs like they had been. Some of the trails are cut off. So I didn't have a lot of confidence that I would see something in there like we had in the past.
And that's something to maybe consider a little bit, is that we have a lot of our stand locations set up because we're so familiar with this territory. We know where deer have moved year after year after year. And so a lot of stands, we don't shuffle around a whole lot. We know this is where they're going to be. Well, the storm came through over the summer, and this particular area, it really tore up. And we didn't make any stand adjustments, which maybe we could have, maybe not. But the normal travel route of these deer has really changed quite a bit there. They're still in the area. There's nothing keeping them out of there. But the trail that, that they'd normally be on that was, 30 yards away or whatever, now all of a sudden they've switched and they've even got closer or further. And so we're kind of trying to learn where they're actually moving at right there.
Yeah. And we spend a lot of time, I think a lot of people do this, sitting in the stand not seeing stuff. And so you're going through scenarios and you have your yardages picked out, you have your different shot selections, well, that's all changed now.
Yep.
I have no idea. So anyway, I texted, I was like, I'm just going to go to my favorite stand, my last day of the week to hunt here, and head in there. So I get in, right after I get into the stand, it's still dark. I hear a doe blowing, and she's across this open pasture field up in this draw, and it's in the area where we thought this buck was living based on last year's information. And he's got some sign this year up in there. So anyway, she was blowing like she would at a coyote, or if she had just smelled me, but the wind was right for me. I didn't think it was blowing at me, and it didn't seem, I think you can tell when a deer picks up on you and is directed at you. This was off in the distance and whatever. So she blew a few times. I thought, well, whatever, And I was in pretty good spirits, really, for the morning. And then a young buck comes right across from where I walked in and cuts across that field heading west. And he's just all about business. He's trying to find something. And I thought, oh, that's what you want. Some activity already. This is all right. And it's just getting kind of that gray light. And I hear the doe start blowing and some heavy grunting, and all of a sudden a crash, and its horns together. No mistaking that. And it's just loud as can be. And I grab the little handy camcorder, flip it on. I think I say to it, they're coming, or there's something, they're fighting. And I just get it flipped on, and these deer enter that field, and they are chasing this doe hard. And I've never heard this before. It sounded like a train whistle. She was, every step of her run, she was blowing, just trying to keep in front of these bucks. I've never heard that before. And so I was putting the pieces together. I was like, I understand what's happening, why she was blowing. I think she might have been a young doe and or was fed up with these bucks, but they were trying to corral her and chasing each other. And I get on them with the camera and then start watching with the binoculars. And this Big 10's one of those bucks, and he's trying to herd everything around. And it's a few seconds. They run around out in the middle there, and then she takes off to the southwest, blowing until I can't hear her anymore. And I thought, well, shoot, they're traveling really fast. But that's cool.
Yeah.
They're done for the day. Based on the previous week's activities, that's all I'm going to see today.
Yeah. Well, and that field where they come out into there is interesting because so where we have our stands, we set back in the trees away off the edge of it. Because for some reason, we've never been able to find a great spot right on the edge where they're consistently coming back. So move back a little bit, get some cover, and when they come off of the field and go up in the trees, that's where we get on top of them. But from that field, they can literally go any point of the compass. So when you see something come out there, if it's by itself, there's usually kind of a path it'll follow. But if something starts chasing it, you have no idea where it's going to go. It may go completely opposite direction from where you're setting. So it's neat to be able to watch stuff, but a lot of times they kind of flip out and head off a different direction, and you don't know where they're going to go. So
yeah, and what has happened in the past is you see that chasing in the morning, and then midday things settle down, and then those bucks will break apart and come back through, check scrapes, rubs, and all that stuff that's right in that area. So that's kind of what I was hoping for.
Yeah, and they really like to patrol kind of 10 or 20 yards inside the trees from this field on all edges of it. Kind of throughout the day, they'll check scrapes and trails through there. So it's a great place to set, and there's almost always something moving through there. Yeah.
So they're gone. I turn the camera back off and get settled back in. And I don't know how long it was after that, but all of a sudden I hear this doe train coming again, and it's headed straight towards me. I hear her blowing, and at that point I knew immediately I got to get my bow, click on the GoPro, and here they come. I will just play this video real quick, just so we refresh our memory how this actually goes.
Yeah, and setting up kind of what you're looking at, the field where you've been watching them is going to be kind of off to the right, but from where they're coming is the thickest stuff, so you can't really see what's going on until it's 30 yards in front of you.
They're coming through. The doe is first, and then a train of young bucks, and I hear his grunting coming up behind him, and everything is going so fast that they are going right underneath my stand.
Which is completely bizarre, because if you look at where this is set up, where the doe and the first buck come through, it is a thick, tangled mess. Nobody ever want to try to walk through there, and they go blasting through that right underneath the stand, full speed, just crash.
Yeah, and my mind is going a million miles a second. So obviously they're coming fast to me, and then now they're at a trajectory right under my stand. There's no shot there.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm like, okay, here comes the big buck. He's with him. He's grunting. I'm going to have to figure out how to stop him. I'm going to have to be loud and aggressive, because it's not... Normally I like to kind of squeak with my mouth, not to spook him. But I'm like, I got to be loud. And you know, you're talking, Darren, about it being a tangled mess. For whatever reason, he didn't just go flying through this mess. I guess it's an older buck mentality.
Well, and I don't know that he would have fit through some of those spaces, because they were going through some tight stuff, and he was kind of picking a little slow, but still full speed. He wasn't going slow. He was going to keep up with them.
And he gets on my side of this little draw and stops, because there's a bunch of deadfalls right there. So he probably couldn't navigate through there. But for whatever reason, he takes a turn to his left, which is perfect. And so if he's coming kind of perpendicular to me, I'm going to be able to stop him, and he's going to be more or less broadside at 20 yards. Perfect. Well, he starts picking up speed on the chase again, and when I stop, you know, I make my sounds, as you heard, he wheels around and faces me, and he's probably in pursuit of that doe and everything, so I kind of clicking in his mind. And so he stops facing at me. I'm at full draw. Now, this is not a shot that I play in my mind. You know, I've heard of guys taking on frontal shots, but more often than not, they're on the ground shooting straight on, or it's at a further distance, whatever the case is. But I'm full drawn, and so I shoot him right in the chest. Just let one fly. Oh man! At first, I just had such mixed reactions, because I have no idea of what the deer's anatomy is. I do. If I take time to think about it, I can process it, but I had zero time to think about it. I was at full draw. He's at 15 yards. I'm going to shoot. And that's what I did. And just popped him right in the chest. Well, he turns and wheels and bounds away a little ways, and that arrow's just lodged straight in his chest. So I'm not feeling good about that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. So going back and looking at the shot, though, like left and right is just square on. And unfortunately, because you're up in the air a little bit, like his head blocked where the arrow needed to go, which would have been probably another 3 or 4 inches higher. And had it been there, you know, maybe from ground level, or it had been a little higher up on the terrain or something, it would have been just absolutely lights out dead deer. But yeah, I'll let you kind of talk about your feelings, but I know what your initial reaction was, because you texted me, and I was at home kind of getting around the morning, and I got a text that said, "I think I just screwed up."
Yep.
And I was like, well, I know what more or less I know what that means. So we'll see how the rest of the day goes here. So looking back at it, pausing the video, analyzing it that way, I would have had to been right through the white throat patch down to get him. I think under the circumstances, with him moving so fast and just everything happening, I would have failed at that shot 9 out of 10 times. If I'd have had plenty of time to work on it and think about it and aim, I could have got it done. But anyway, I took what I thought was my only chance, because my other thought was that once he starts moving, he's going to be out of here. Yeah.
I'm not going to have a shot.
And the crazy thing is, I went back and replayed it, and I can't remember exactly, but I think from when he comes into view, so you could actually tell what it was, to when he is now like 15, 17 yards away, is less than 5 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, it is no time at all. And give another 2 seconds, he would have been directly underneath the stand. Another second, out the back, and stuff so thick you'd never see him again.
And so my ultimate decision should have been to pass the shot, because I hadn't rehearsed it in my head. I hadn't practiced it, all the uncertainties there. I should have just passed it, but I didn't. So I let an arrow go. He bounds off a little ways and the arrow's still sticking out, but it does have decent penetration, but his tail's up, which is not a good sign. At one point he falters, he kind of staggers. I thought, oh man, that's good. But then he works his way down the hill a little bit and I can still see him. The other thing that I screwed up on probably was that it had been so windy that week, and it usually is, that I took my quiver off my bow and it was shoved down in my pack. And so when he was standing there and faltered a little bit, he was probably 30, 35 yards, which I could do easily, but I didn't have an opportunity to grab another arrow and knock it and get it on him without completely turning around. So for what it's worth, that was a hang up. But he stops down in the bottom, kind of on a little bench, and he's messing around down there. And I thought, well, he's hurt bad enough that he's stopped. He's slowed down. He's out of the chase of that doe. I think with the wind direction being right in my face, with all these windfalls around me, these trees piled up around, I think I can sneak out of the stand with another arrow, get around this trail and get above him at about 40 yards and pop him with another one. And I get down, I flip the GoPro on, so I video this, and I get over there and I find blood and I'm going slow and I get to where I need to be, but there was a buck across the ravine yet that had stopped to observe all of this, and he blew. He saw me, blew, drew attention to me. Whether this buck saw me, I think he did at that point, and he was out of there. And again, looked like he was moving okay, but I did find some decent blood, and at that point I didn't find the arrow yet. I wasn't feeling good, and that's about when I texted Darren. I just snuck out of there, left everything down in the tree stand, and headed toward the pickup just to try not to bump anything, and texted Darren, I think I screwed up, because that was my feeling. I knew enough that I wasn't feeling like he was probably going to die. I was feeling more like, or at least not quickly. Yeah.
Well, and so kind of when I got that and called and talked about it, like, I've had that feeling before too. And I know enough now, like, I've shouldered a couple of deer and I know instantly, like, well, that deer's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But this was a different situation. Looking at the video straight on, at that distance, it looks like that's a dead deer.
Yeah.
Because it just smokes him square front on. And, had it been ground, whatever, I don't know. But my initial impression is like, woo, man, there's a good chance that got him. And none of us had any experience with this, head-on kind of thing. Had it been a shoulder hit or whatever, I probably would have agreed, maybe not. But looking at this, I was kind of optimistic because it looked good.
And I think anytime you draw blood like that, it's your obligation to do a track and go as far as you think is reasonable. Get some more information, and we certainly had the time and opportunity to do that. Darren had already gone back to Kansas City, and he calls me and he said, well, I'll pack up and head back up there because I was planning on hunting today anyway. And I just tagged out a week earlier than, so I said, well, that's completely your decision. I don't feel good about it, but we are going to go look for him one way or the other. So now I'll wait. That's going to be a 3-hour, 4-hour wait before you get there now. So,
well, I wasn't going to be able to I had the day off anyhow. Well, it was Saturday, but I didn't have anything planned anyhow. And I wasn't going to be able to just hang around at home waiting to find out what's going on. So I was like, well, we got to give the deer some time. That'll give me enough time to get up there, just get back and get out of the woods and wait for me to get up there, and we'll go find it.
Yeah, so we wait the 4 hours. Of course, I'm just bumming hard about all this. And Darren rolls in, we get everything together, and we agree that we're going to pick up blood and just track it kind of slow as we can. I'll be right there kind of in the lead with an arrow ready. If we find him bedded and we can get another shot, we'll try to figure that out when the time comes. Otherwise, let's just see what we find. not long after we hit the blood trail, we find the arrow, so it was already popped out before I lost sight of the deer in the morning.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those situations like, it wasn't a gut hit or something where it's like, okay, we got to give him a day to go hole up and die. It was kind of like, well, this is a questionable shot. Either he's dead now already, or he's hurt somewhere and we got to get another arrow in him before he disappears forever, kind of thing.
Right.
So that was our decision of, well, we'll wait a little bit of time. Hopefully he'll bed up, but we got to get on it and figure out what's going on.
Yeah. And yeah, so that's kind of what we did. We just went real slow. We had enough blood, but it turned into one of those injuries that when he was crossing logs or crossing a ditch, it opened him up a little more. So you had some decent stuff, but then on level, flat terrain or a nice trail, it was just pin drops of blood. And we're just going slow. I don't know. It was probably 3.5, 4 hours of that. We ended up on the trail going 400 plus yards.
Yeah, and by the time things kind of started drying up, we'd been at it, 4 hours, I think, to go 400 something yards, and not like in a straight line, but up and down and across all these little creeks and trails and stuff. And it wasn't like we were having to really search real hard for blood so much, but we were just going so slow, just like go 10 foot, look around, try to find the next patch of blood ahead of you a little bit, keep looking while you're walking up to it. So it wasn't like we were on our hands and knees kind of thing.
Yeah.
There was pretty good blood for quite a few hundred yards, but we wanted to go slow because hopefully we would see him bedded up somewhere.
And we've had deer that we've killed that had almost zero blood trail anyway. So you can't always go off the blood. One of the first things that worried me was he went down in and back up a ditch.
Yeah.
So it's like, if he's moving that good, then I don't know. But
not a little ditch, one that I had a hard time getting out of. It was quite the little ravine.
But of course, he was on adrenaline from the chase. So the other part of that being slow and methodical, we're entering an area, I don't know, it's 50 acres or something probably, that we leave alone. And that's where he was headed. Mm-hmm. So now we know it's kind of probably his bedroom, but we don't go in there hunting at all. And so we didn't really want to just blow everything out of there, or if he's holed up in there, we kind of want to learn where he's at. So we're just going real slow, and Darron had the good idea, brought along some fluorescent tape. And so every time we would find a spot of blood, he would tape it. And so we could see, looking backwards, where this deer was going and kind of predict maybe where he was gonna go to find the next blood. So we're up in this canyon really thick, and we ended up bumping a deer out. And my first thought was, oh, there he is, but we didn't see if he had antlers on him. We didn't know what it was. But it was a single deer in the vicinity of where this blood trail was leading to. But try as we might, we never could find that bed. We could not connect our last blood to a bed. So we don't know. We just, at that point, after losing blood, we just kind of combed the areas softly.
It may, and kind of thinking back on it now, like it may have been him that we bumped out, but it would have been odd for him to end up there looking at where we kind of lost blood at, because it was kind of, he would have had to take a hard right turn, cross a creek, go up the side of the hill. He wouldn't have been following kind of his natural path where he would have been heading. He would have had to take a real hard turn, and I don't know, it could have been him, I don't know. But part of the reason we leave this area alone in there is it's so thick that you cannot get in and out of there without deer seeing you. There's just no possible way to move. So it's a good place for them to be, but it's impossible to get in and out of, try to hunt it.
Yep. So that was the end of my season, as I thought. After the shot, it pretty much ended the way I felt it would. Now we've got a wounded deer, a pretty nice one at that, and no other real options. I think it's fair to say that if you have other mature deer and you can confirm that the deer you injured is not dead, I can see where you could pick another one and go after him. But now we had no other shooters. We really had no other bucks showing up that were older than maybe 2 years old.
Yeah.
So I had nothing to get really excited about anyway. plus I just really felt like I injured this animal. I want to figure out what's happened to him. Surely he'll show up on some cameras the way he was acting, that would be the best case, and we'll figure out if he's really seriously injured still or what the case might be. But he didn't show up for us the remainder of that weekend and into the next week. Of course, I had to go back to work that following Monday, which just really added to the pain of it all.
Yeah.
But,
well, and part of that, kind of thinking back on it, like the area he was heading to, the area he was comfortable, probably the place he bedded, we don't actually have a camera up in there. And so all the places we had cameras were on scrapes and kind of places the does are hanging out. So he would have had to been kind of go back to his normal routine.
And they're places that I'd already pressured from hunting. So if he caught on at all that it was somebody shooting at him, which he probably didn't, but that plays into it too. He's not going to go probably to an area where he's felt any kind of pressure before. He's going to go take care of himself. So I go back to work, but this whole time I've got a buddy that hunts the property just to the south of us, and he wasn't hunting it real hard this year, but he helps me with information. He helps us. He tells us what he sees and so forth. And so I let him know. I was like, hey, I injured a buck. Let me know if you see something or if you hear something. I just want to know what happened. So, he agreed to that, and then I go back to work, and there's a couple work buddies that I talk to about hunting. They don't hunt around us, so I can share information with them, and they've got their own stuff going on. So I shared it all with them, and they gave me their opinions. Chad, who I had on here, probably the last podcast, he had the helpful words of, yep, I've hit a buck like that. He died of old age. So that was really comforting. But, everybody kind of was helping me through it and that sort of thing. You just really feel bad injuring an animal. And this was one I'd really like to have caught up to. So the following Wednesday rolls around, and I get to work, and I get a phone call, right after 8 o'clock. And it's this buddy that hunts to the south. And he said, oh, hey, did you figure out anything on that deer you hit? And I said, no, nothing's showing up on cameras. I don't know. He's like, well, I was hunting a different farm. This is a ways away. I heard the coyotes going like I've never heard them before. They're kind of down that, across the river from me, down toward where your guys' farm is. And man, they were making a racket. I said, well, that's comforting, this and that. I said, yeah, I didn't hear that. Could be if that's a good way to find a dead deer. Listen for the crows or the coyotes, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, well, thanks for the info. And then we're almost to the end of the conversation. He's like, well, I talked to the landowner and he got some pictures of a deer. I'll text them to you. He texted me pictures. One was taken the Sunday after I injured this deer, and one was taken the next Tuesday, so the day before this conversation, and 100% the same buck. And he's walking fine.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why couldn't you have led the conversation with the pictures, that sort of thing. So now I knew this deer was alive and looked like he was doing fine.
Yeah.
Of course, we don't know if he's going to get sick from this, get an infection or something. We don't know. That could happen. But from the pictures, he's walking fine. Another funny side note to that was I'm on the phone at work. I'm trying to act like I'm busy, and our general manager pops his head in to the window. It's like, oh, hey, Dustin, do you need something? He's like, oh, no, I was going to ask you about that deer you shot. It's like, oh, well, I'm getting information right now. I'll let you know. I'll track you down. So everybody at work's really cool about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So that would have been like the 13th, 14th, somewhere in there.
Yeah, somewhere in there. I think we had pictures, or the neighbor had pictures. I shot the 12th, I believe, on the 13th. And then the 15th, another picture.
And I was kind of looking back through, and probably get it here, but the 18th, I think, is he shows back up on our.
That was the first camera back on ours.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, 5 days, 6 days, something like that, and checking all the same areas he'd been before. No sign. I mean, from the picture, you'd never be able to tell anything is unusual with him at all. So he was back there already.
So he's back in the groove of things, and I think you were the first one to see that picture and texted me early that morning and told me something to the effect of, let's get back out there, go after him. And like you were alluding to, now he's back on his regular pattern, so I do feel like he's huntable.
Yeah.
But the nighttime pictures again, so really didn't get any daylight pictures of him through our cell cameras. And the other thing that hurt us was the one camera went AWOL during this.
Yeah.
So like the day after, Darron did a really cool thing with our Tacticam cameras, brought up some big batteries. You can talk just a second about that.
Yeah. Well, I got tired and could not afford to try to keep tracking down lithium AA batteries because they've gotten just ridiculously expensive. You used to be able to just buy a whole bunch of them on Amazon and, you were good for 6 months. So I got to be the point where, one, I couldn't find them, and two, they'd tripled in price over the last year. And so I just went and bought a whole bunch of, small 12-volt mower batteries, like 12 amp hour batteries, I think what they are, and some adapter cables and little boxes. And so I made up a whole bunch of these battery boxes so we can just plug them in, and now we don't have to worry about replacing batteries when they all go dead. But and I don't know if this was the problem with that camera or not. There's not a real secure way to fasten the power plug in the bottom. It just kind of hangs there, so you got to wrap it around there, and I don't know, apparently the little critters like to hang off of it or something.
If a squirrel gets it or a raccoon or something,
Yeah.
But that was the case with that one. I found out 10 days later or whatever, when I got back to check it, the cable had just popped out the bottom, plugged it back in, and it fired right back up.
Yeah.
So the deer's showing back up on our farm, hitting the normal spots. Now I got to figure out how to hunt him. The other thing that he had started doing, I think at this point I had put some corn out, because it's kind of our habit now that after we tag out, when we're done hunting, then we start putting the corn out, because we do really want to encourage the deer to stay on our property. Well, my thought was, if he's hurt and he's needing just an easy food source, I'll make sure that we have some corn out for him in this one feeder, and maybe it'll attract him. And it did. He came into that feeder. So the next weekend, whatever that was, it's going to be between when I shot him and Thanksgiving.
Yeah, basically a week before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, week before Thanksgiving. I'm going out there, but I no sooner leave the house than he's on that feeder, and the place where I want to go is I have to walk by the feeder to get there. So I decide, he's down in there. I'm going to skip that. I'm going to go to Hudson's stand, the double man stand that Darron sometimes hunts out of. I can slip in right over the hill, stay away from him, and get into that stand. And that all goes really well, but I get into the stand and I'm just tidying everything up. It's still dark, and I hear a deer blow at me. In fact, he's right where I shot him. I'm like, man, I'm sure that's him. He's working back up the hill, going to bed. He's done feeding, and he caught me. So he blows. I'm assuming it's him, and he's out of there. Well, I thought I need to do something to salvage the morning. I don't know where I came up with this, but I had the rattling antlers with me. So I cracked them together, and I'm not even done rattling, and a buck is beelining it underneath me, and he gets right under the trees, and I'm stuck there with the antlers in my hand, and he looks up at me and spooks out of there, and it's just a young 2.5-year-old. He gets across the field, but before leaving the area, he just sits there and blows and blows and blows. So I'm done for the day. So I'm out of there. I get out as soon as I can feel like I can get out without does and things getting busted. And so again, I'm not feeling good. I'm just a step behind this buck and probably educating him too much, bumping him around and that sort of thing. So then Thanksgiving rolls around, and we're going to host Thanksgiving at our house, or at Darron, no, we're in Kansas City.
Yep.
So I'm going to be home. I talked to my wife. I was like, how long can I sit out Thanksgiving morning before I need to be home in time to make it to Kansas City? It's a 3-hour drive. So we agree that I can be there till maybe 9, at the very latest. And I go up to the knob where Darron had shot his deer, because I figure I can get in there and out of there without bumping the whole rest of the farm. There's still scrapes up there. There's still deer showing up there. So I get in there, and it's a nice morning, and down behind me. So this is the exact same set a year ago where I videoed this 10-point when he was a broken G2 deer. It's feeling really good, and I hear something in the bottom of that canyon, and it's not a blow, but I've heard this multiple times where a buck, it's just like he's clearing his nose, just a couple soft blows. And I think it's where they're, processing the estrus scent of a doe. I hear that, I'm like, oh man, that's a buck. I know it. Hear a couple soft grunts, and I twist around trying to get down in there, and he's close. Not bow range, but close enough that I got to be extremely careful how I move. But I get all twisted around, and I see a rack bobbing around down there, and then I start to see it move up toward me on a trail, and he's raking the back of his rack against a tree, and I was like, oh shoot, this is awesome. But I couldn't, the way I had to be twisted, I couldn't hold that position. So I decided I'm going to get comfortable again, face the field, because if this doe and buck come out here, then I'll be ready and be able to draw on him. Well, they do, and this buck, he hops the fence right under the stand and pops out, and it's a 2.5-year-old. I think it was the same one I rattled in. And at that point, I was so excited, I almost let go. But I knew that if I did, then I'd have to take care of this deer before Thanksgiving. So it saved him, and he went over and munched at the little corn pile or whatever he did. And then they were off. And I thought, well, that's probably all I'm going to see. If this doe was hot and there was a big buck in the area, he would have been with her.
Right
so
there. Yeah.
I'm going to get out of here, not get in trouble. We're going to go to do Thanksgiving. And so that was kind of how all of that played out. Now, rifle season starts the Wednesday after Thanksgiving. So now we're creeping into worrying about rifle season. And so I decided, of course, I'm going to go out with a gun and see if I can get on this deer. But I haven't shot anything with my rifle yet. This new one I have, we used to rifle hunt quite a bit, but I haven't for years with an opportunity to shoot something. So I know how that'll go. But I decided I'm going to stay back on the fringes of some of these fields and see if I can catch this bigger buck cruising through, and just see what happens. Now, I go watch a couple CRP fields, and I hear some shots from the neighbors and this and that, but I'm not seeing anything. I think I sat 3 or 4 times with a rifle, and I can't remember a single deer that I saw. It was just really slow in those areas, but I was not going to pressure any of our farm because there's a lot more rifle pressure around us. I just didn't want to risk bumping something out. So called that good, and then we waited until after rifle season, and I went down and checked some regular SD card cameras, and turns out we had quite a few pictures of this 10-point that I'd hit between when I had injured him and rifle season. So he was down there. He just wasn't hitting our cell cameras, and he was staying kind of tucked in the woods. Yeah.
Well, and so typically, I mean, we're mostly bow hunters, right? So we don't do a whole lot of rifle season. A lot of times, like after mid-November or so, we're kind of out of there. We get out of the woods and just leave it alone. But this is a little bit different situation because we knew, or you knew, that guy was still out there, and he called this home. So there was a chance, he'd come by again. So being out there during rifle season is always a little bit stressful, right? Because we have neighbors and they're good folks mostly, but every shot you hear, it's like, well, wonder which one that was.
Yeah. So. And there are spots that I could have sat up in theory to hunt this deer specifically and where he was, but it would have screwed up our neighbors' chances. I would have. Well, and so that's not fair to them. If they're holding off, they give us bow season, and they're going to come in and rifle hunt. We'll just all stick to one end, and they can kind of focus on the other. So that was kind of the deal there. But the thing that was kind of fishy was after we looked at our cell camera pictures and then these SD card pictures, he stopped showing up on any camera basically that Saturday or Sunday of rifle season, somewhere in there, the first weekend. And that's not uncommon though either, because once they get pressured, they're going to hide up. Yep. That's happened before where they just... The other thing that was playing into my mind was we didn't get any pictures of him in velvet. Yeah. And we didn't get any pictures until mid-October. Yeah. So I thought, well, he could have been done with rut on our farm, and now he's back to wherever his home range is. Yep.
Yeah, and not knowing, exactly where he was. We figured we had an idea which direction he was coming from, but heck, the rut range, I mean, he could have normally been 2 miles away, so it was hard to know, right? And
Yeah.
like I said, a lot of times deer do disappear kind of end of November, early December, and a lot of times they'll show up again after the first of the year for a little bit, and so it wasn't too unusual.
Yeah. So that was kind of how the season closed out. I was going to continue to hunt with my bow. Of course, our season goes to the end of the year, but I had no other evidence. We didn't have any other pictures, him showing up or any other bucks. So I really didn't even hunt until the remainder of the year. It just wasn't going to work out weather-wise and with what we were seeing. It was just kind of all dried up. There weren't any other bucks to chase. And so...
Yep. So that just kind of wraps up this year then, right, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So I was pretty bummed. The worst thing was just not knowing what happened to this deer. I'm gearing up now to figure out how to hunt him for next year.
Yeah.
I assume he survived. The thing that we were doing also was between the hunter that I'm buddies with, that hunts south of us, I was keeping in contact with people, trying to get information to figure this out. And there was no positive word that they were seeing this deer or that anybody got this deer. And you usually get enough puzzle pieces to figure this stuff out.
And that's not done out of spite or jealousy or whatever. It's nice to know kudos to whoever gets a deer, right?
Yep.
You put the effort into it, you deserve that deer. But it's nice to know, because we've had a lot of deer that just vanish off the face of the earth and you have no idea. Did somebody shoot him? Did he die somewhere? What's going on? And it's just nice to know, because you want that information.
Yeah.
So you want to know, am I going to be chasing him next year or not? Or what's going to show up? So.
Yeah. You just we're just super interested in knowing. So that was my feeling going into this year. Now we want to go shed hunting.
Yeah.
And so we're watching these cameras to see if they're going to drop their antlers. We do try to get some feed out there to try to pull these deer in. Like Darron talked about at the beginning, the weather was really nasty here off and on for the last 2 months. And it was pulling a lot of deer in to these corn feeders. It was negative temperatures. We did get some snow cover, and these deer were flocking in. So hopefully they'll be bouncing around the feeders and dropping their antlers, and that's what we're going after. So we, again, other than putting out some corn, stay completely off the farm. No other reason to be out there. And I was kind of waiting on Darron to find a free weekend to come up, here in this time of the year to start seeing some shed antlers. And so he made it up yesterday, Friday night.
So this is what now, middle of February, I guess?
Yeah.
Which
2/3 of the way through, I guess.
Yeah, and so kind of talking about the sheds, like a lot of times where we are, they're still holding sheds at this time, but we were kind of watching, and when they're still holding, we don't really go out and mess around and pressure them too much, right? Because we don't want them pushing them all over or whatever. There's no reason to. But looking at the cameras the past week or so, we went from having a lot of bucks holding antlers to all of a sudden, like, it's pretty rare to pull up a picture and have some antlers on there. So that idea, most of them would probably drop by now.
Yeah, so that was the goal this weekend, was go look for some sheds. And I was out checking some electric cattle fence in January, early part of January, and there was one field that I came across some deer hair in, and I was busy, so I didn't look at it, but I told Darron, I'm going to go check out these areas because there's some hair there. I'm going to start checking these thick ravines. So
funny, sorry, before you get too deep in that, funny story on that. You called me when I was out and went into the pasture looking around for antlers, and I only caught about every third word or so of that. I caught deer hair and ravine, and then we lost each other, and it's like, well, I have absolutely no idea where he's going to be at, but I'm just going to keep wandering around for a little bit.
Yeah. We're not very effective at using onX. We were both tracking each other and missing each other there for a little while, but that's okay. We covered a lot of ground at the early part of the day, and Darron had already found one side to a nice 8-point, so the day was not all lost. But I really wanted to check out this end of the farm where we thought this deer was probably living, hopefully find his sheds over there or something. And so we kind of combed everything else that morning, and we needed to get back by lunch, and we were in and up over here. And right before we dropped in, I told Darron, I have a feeling we're going to find a deadhead down here.
It's not unusual at all to find
No.
at least one deadhead a year for whatever reason. Can't think of a time. Well, maybe I found one that I shot in archery season and wasn't able to find, and then found it, shed season. That was quite a few years ago, but whatever reason, we almost always find one or two deadheads.
And to be fair, I don't think that they're all necessarily hunter shot.
Oh, no,
because I can think of a handful that we positively know were injured. Like
it's
car injuries or something else, because we've had pictures of them and don't seem to be wounded by a bullet or an arrow that have died. So
it's a hard time of the year, right? You get that cold temperatures and the weather, and you get a deer with a badly busted up leg or something like, or
horn to the head. I mean, you've shot some with pus in their brains, and that's going to kill them. So
so it's not unusual to find a dead one, and this is a place we've found some, because it's a super thick bedding area that we don't really go into too much. So it's not unusual to find one in that area.
And so this canyon's, I'd say, a good quarter mile long, let's say. And I drop down in there, and I'm just kind of combing real slow back and forth. Darren picks one side of the creek and I pick the other, and that's kind of how we do it. But I'm just combing back and forth, just trying to find something. I'd really like to find a shed. And I get about 2/3 of the way down, and I'm going along this main trail. I've kind of let up searching because I'm going to try to find where Darren is. And I come across 2 legs and a part of a spine. I'm like, oh, okay. So I think I flip on the GoPro and I talk about that for a little bit. And I look at the back leg, and it looks like a buck. So I'm like, I'm going to stand right here and look around. I need to find the head, just see what this thing is. So I'm standing there, and not 20 yards off, I see a rack poking up. I'm like, oh, well, cool. So I walk over there, and it's just a crazy feeling because pieces are coming together, and I walk up to this rack and skull, and it's that deer that I hit.
Yeah.
And it's so strange. So of course I holler for Darren a couple times, get over here.
I had to meander around for a little bit because it's so thick, like I couldn't see him, and I had to kind of reorient myself where the noise is coming from. But the the funny thing was, and I wasn't talking to the camera at the moment, but I was thinking in my head, we had talked about doing a podcast because we need to catch up on stuff. Like, well, I know Derek's not going to talk about it, but we really need to talk about the 2022 season, how that kind of went. So I was literally thinking of that when I heard a shout from me. I was like, it's not often somebody's yelling out here, so that means something significant happened. So flip around and head back where I'd come from. And
I had been trying to think of a way to put a positive spin on this whole story prior to finding this deer. At first, I didn't want to talk about it. I thought it ruined my season and all this stuff. But I kind of started coming around, talked to enough people, and kind of was thinking about how I was kind of okay with it. But now we found him, and we know some kind of the end of it. We know that he died. Now, since then, in the last 24 hours, again, I've tried to revisit all of my contacts, and we've backtracked this story. I doubt that my arrow killed him, just based on the pictures, but I cannot get a straight story about anybody else encountering him or shooting him, getting a hit on him. Nobody officially approached us to go look for a wounded deer. So I assume some injury killed him somewhere along the line, but
it's hard to know. And I guess my take on it was, if there was somebody that was up close and personal, somebody else that knew this deer and knew they had a potential hit on him, they would be after us to, hey, can we go look for this deer? Right. And of course, that's fine. Maybe some conditions, hey, be careful, there's horses out there, or, we'll go with you, look around or whatever. But I don't know, my thing is, like, if somebody really knew what this was, cool, let's go find it. Come find us and let's go.
Like my blood trail that we were tracking, it never crossed property lines. So I never did approach anybody else. But I would expect, I would have, if that blood trail would have crossed the property line, I would have approached the landowner and asked. So we would have expected the same situation.
And we've done that in all all directions that I can think of, both asking and giving permission from all the neighbors too, right? So if somebody had shot this thing and blood came over, yeah, give us a call. We'll go find it, because that's the same respect we want for somebody else too. And that's the way it's always been. So
Yeah.
who knows? But
So we don't know that part, but we do know that he's dead. And so at that point, Darren gets over, and I kind of talk about how we found him and all that stuff. And then, of course, I still have my regular tag, but we know that by law you're supposed to have a salvage tag to be in possession of a skull and attached antlers and that sort of thing. So I had the number of a wildlife and parks officer in my phone. I called that, and it was a different officer. He's no longer in our area, apparently, so didn't get to talk to anybody. It just went to a voicemail. So then we called the sheriff's department and talked to them. And basically after that conversation, well, they took my phone number and were going to call me back, but we had to get to a birthday party in the afternoon. So we waited around. We just left everything out there. And then I ended up calling them back and said, hey, I'm going to be by your office here within the next hour. I was just going to be in the area. Can I stop by? So I stopped by and talked to them, and they said, if you're still in possession of your unfilled tag, that serves as your salvage tag. So I'm going to take their word for that. And we went back and picked it up. So,
and we have documentation of the call.
So
it's
not
do the right thing, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things. That's what the law says. Now, this is not a giant deer. It's 30 inches or 20 to 30 inches bigger than anything I've taken in the past. So to me, it's a significant deer, which is why I felt so bad. Part of the reason why I felt so bad so much of the season for losing him and making a bad decision. But a great deer nonetheless. And we just wanted to do everything right so that there's no questions asked and that sort of thing. So we ended up finding him, and it was crazy to me that kind of on the day that I declared as the start of the 2023 season, actually wrapped up my 2022 season.
Yeah.
And not in ideal fashion, but it's...
But now that you have that information, you can close out that chapter, and it's interesting to think about. I always have a hard time remembering what season I'm talking about or thinking about, because there's so much blurred lines in there, and when one starts and one stops, and I'm not good at years anyhow, but I can't remember if you touched base on this or not, but did you mention kind of where we found him as opposed to where we were trailing him?
Yeah. So we found him, I don't know, within 40 yards of where we ended up losing blood.
Yeah.
On the exact trail that we followed.
Like if he had been there dead from when you shot him, like we would have stepped all over him multiple times. I mean, he was right there. Obviously that was his safe area, right? And it's kind of those things, like that's where he was at. But boy, if we tried to hunt that, we had blown him out of there so quick. And I've tried before. Actually, we moved a stand now. Mm-hmm. We had a stand within, 30 yards or so of this spot. But it's so tight in there, it's impossible to get in and out without spooking something. And it's one of those areas where there's deer, but there is no wind that's a good wind there. So we've decided just stay out of it.
And it's like, instead of having a deer trail, which there's a primary trail, but it's kind of a cattle trail because we do run cows, but it's more like a swath where those deer, so it's really hard to get predict where a shot's going to be. It's just gnarly in there. So we just leave it alone. And I guess
maybe there's some things we could do to improve a couple of areas in there, but I think that's one of the things that kind of makes some of our other historical areas super successful, is there's parts of the farm we just don't mess with. Mm-hmm. We stay out of it. And so they're if the deer do sense there's something odd, it's not terribly unusual for us to be in some of these locations, whether it's dealing with the livestock or checking fence or whatever. They're kind of used to us being in some areas. This particular corner, there's almost no reason any of us ever go back there unless you're looking for a calf or something. Yeah. Just stay out of it. And so it's nice to have that area they can be comfortable in there.
Yeah. But that's the story of my Big 10 this year. Like I said, I still count it as probably now one of the best seasons. Actually, leading up to this discovery too, it was a really good season. Even the ups and downs, we it was one bad decision on my part. This could have played out differently. Obviously, I wouldn't have had a rack in my hands well, who knows? But anyway, it wouldn't have been any part of my story if I'd have passed that deer. But with Darron tagging out, and now with kind of closing this chapter on this deer, it's just a really cool season.
Yeah, it's cool. It's kind of a bummer, but we know the story now, right? We know what happened. Now we focus on going forward here and seeing what happens this next year, and we're not always wondering what happened to this. And that's kind of one of the bummers, is that we look through a lot of our old deer pictures over the years, and we've had some really good deer come through. Some of them we've got, some of them we know what happened, through talking with the neighbors or whatever. But there's a lot of them that we just have no idea whatever happened to them. And, maybe they're on somebody's wall, whatever. Maybe they'd be fully open to, maybe they're showing off all their friends or whatever. Who knows? Cool. They'd probably show them to us, and we'd love to know. But the other part is a lot of deer just disappear and nobody ever knows what happens to them.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty fascinating too, is to think about that. Not all these deer are getting shot. There's a lot of them that are living their lives, and they just fade off. Nobody knows. That
is one thing that's funny. I look back at some of the deer that we've taken, and I think a lot of them are way older than I would give them credit for, because these thick canyons and thick pieces of property and big river bottoms and stuff, there's deer that can survive their whole lifetime without hardly being seen. So that's pretty neat. But
no, it's cool that we found them, and look good on the wall. As a good solid deer. So
yeah, he was all chewed up. He got the skull is all chewed on. The nose is a little bit beat up from coyotes and that sort of thing. But that just adds to the story. I mean, it confirms the situation that we found him in. So it is what it is.
Yep, it's an accurate representation of what happened. And at least the squirrels didn't chew off 20 inches of tine, because boy, they could have. Yeah. So it's
the neat thing about it being an archery experience, and I got it on video up close and personal. The instant I saw that rack laying on the ground, I knew it was that deer. Sometimes, if you're rifle hunting or something, sometimes you encounter a deer so fast and so far away that you really don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And this one, it was just living in my head so much. I just knew it. The second I saw it, I was like, that's it.
Yeah. Well, and I think we talked about this, talking about my deer too. And you mentioned earlier, there's like probably 3 bucks, maybe 4 or so, that we've been kind of watching, and we knew were around, and it's like, yep, if these come by, this is what's going to get shot at. And that's what happened with mine I shot this year. I could have, in the years past, I probably would have kind of piddled around and, I don't know what this deer is. Maybe there's something else out there, but it's like, I instantly knew which deer that was. And it's like, yep, this one's getting shot right here and now. And I've almost never had that feeling before this year of, I know what this deer is. There's no question on my mind. He's getting shot at.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my deer I've shot are either quick decisions or, I didn't know anything about it. But the fact that we are so intimate with them this year makes it really cool. We knew exactly what was out there and which ones they were. And so that's pretty neat.
And the thing that I'm frustrated with, I always get buck fever if I have to watch a deer coming in. I get nervous, and that's true with almost any deer, not necessarily with the size. This deer, I hadn't seen him in daylight in person this year, and I was completely under control the entire situation. I wasn't prepared for that scenario of a shot. But as far as being nervous and that sort of thing, completely calm.
Yep.
And it just happened so fast. I knew what I was going to do and reaction, all that. So if it would have been perfect and I'd actually harvested the deer, that would have been so cool. But other than that, it's neat. And
well, it's part of the story.
Yeah.
And
a learning experience.
Learning experience. Do what you can. And figure it all out. But.
And, we ended up, I believe, probably, I'm going to say capitalizing, but capitalizing on the only 2 shot opportunities that you and I either had. Because a lot of times, like you said, maybe you pass a deer or you don't take advantage of an opportunity. I still count mine as an opportunity, although not ideal. But I don't think if I passed that deer, I don't think I'd have had another shot at another deer all year long.
Yeah,
well, I guess I did that Thanksgiving morning. But
and that's kind of one of the disadvantages of our strategy of hunting the rut when it's really kicking in. It's either you go days with no opportunity, and the 1 or 2 opportunities you get that 10 days or whatever are here and gone in 10 seconds kind of thing. So we've kind of had to, again, that helps with knowing the information, knowing what deer are out there. And when you recognize it, it's like, yep, this is it. I'm not messing around. This is what we're going to do. But so that's cool.
The biggest thing, kind of just to wrap this up for me, after feeling kind of crummy, but then trying to be optimistic for next year, I just had such mixed feelings. The way I feel right now, it's like it's a completely even slate. We know what happened. Everything from this point on is brand new. So now we're going to try to find a couple bucks next year that we're interested in. Enjoy watching them all summer. I don't have this looming over my head anymore. It's been put to rest, and we can start brand new and have a lot of fun this next year.
Yep. Before it all gets put to rest, you can have a video on this.
Yeah, I got to put together all the pieces. It's pretty chopped up. I had a lot of fun. Of course, Darron started off just hot with his first. So I was trying to do like within the first 48 hours, or within 48 hours, putting out like our daily deer week videos, and that was really cool. And some of them are really short, but just what we encountered.
Yeah.
Then it kind of dried up, and then it all just turned sour with this. So I've got some video that previously I thought was just completely useless because we really don't broadcast anything unless the deer's dead, kind of a deal, if it's a big enough deer. So
well, and that I felt really bad for you there, because you start, and the first 3 days or whatever of our hunting was pretty fire with activity, and it's like I was super excited for you, pumping out, you had some neat stuff, and then it just dried up. And how many videos can you put up of, well, here's the sunrise, here's a horse, here's a squirrel, and we'll try again next, and there was 3, 4, 5 days straight of that, and then a big disappointment, like, oh no, he's never going to want to record anything ever again. But,
well, we're doing this just strictly for our own entertainment, so ultimately it doesn't matter. But you do want to, if you start with that consistency, keep it up. And the way I was having to do it, like filming, I'd have to go back 2 days, get that film, put it together, and then put it out. So by the time I was trying to do day 4 and 5 of Deer Week, I knew I'd already screwed this up and that had no good end. So I was like, forget it. I don't know how to wrap this up.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of one of those things, like, we're not filming this for any other means than ourselves, or talking about any other means, but boy, it sure helps to have a video to go back and remember what was going on, and replay some of the stuff. Because when you first showed me this video of this shot you took, at first I was kind of like, man, that's rough, but I've made poor decisions, shot decisions for whatever happens. But watching the video, things happen so quickly, and there was literally no other chance with this deer.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
If you, like I said before, if you had time to see him come in, see him stop, get online, pull up an image of the anatomy, figure out where you're going to shoot, and do all that, no problem, easy. But that didn't happen. And it was all in the decision. Like, I understand some of the other poor shots that people make, like a broadside, you hit them in the shoulder, you hit them back.
Yeah.
That kind of thing happens. The thing that just beat me up worse than anything was just my decision not to pass him, because I knew, and this is kind of crazy and kind of confuse things, but the whole season long, I was kind of telling myself, make sure it's a broadside shot, make sure it's a good presentation, don't take a bad shot. And then the only shot I was presented with was this, and then I did it. Like, man, I'm just not good at making these decisions. But like you said, it happens so fast, and
but
just
but
is what it is.
We make our next set of decisions based on the information we've gained from our past decisions, right?
Yeah.
So now
I'll probably shoot the next one in the butt.
Well, we haven't done that yet, so let's give that a try. Oh, but no, I'm super glad you found that. That's awesome. Hopefully, yeah, we're kind of later in February here. Next couple of weeks, should all the antlers should be dropped. Wait till the snow's off a little bit, and we got to go.
Yeah.
I was looking just right now while we were talking. I was scrolling through my tact cam. There were still some pretty big deer left after the first of the year that got to be somewhere. Whether or not we'll find their sheds, I don't know. But
Yeah.
there's some pretty exciting opportunities for next year. So I can't wait for them to start putting on the velvet.
Yeah. There's a bunch of cool things happening. We got to get through turkey season.
Yep.
You're in the middle of your NRL 22 season
Yeah.
with all that kind of stuff. So you got a lot of fun stuff going on, and
yeah,
I'll just hopefully we can get some food plot stuff around, but that's just always subject to our schedules and how the crops need to happen. So we'll see if that goes. But
yep, and it is clearance tree stand season at Walmart. So if you haven't already bought those,
Darren's got them bought up. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, you waited too long. Pro tip, and I'm going to regret telling everybody this. Don't buy tree stands at the end of the year. Wait until like January, because all the stores will clearance them out, and they don't want to stock them back in the back. So
And that's true with clothes too. We both bought up like kids camo and stuff.
Yeah.
Try to get
if you
that
can try to
outfitted.
think ahead a little bit, buy your stuff in January, February, because the stores don't want to tuck it away for another 6 months. So they'll give it to you cheap if you're on it. Anyway, yeah.
Cool. Well, that kind of wraps everything up. That's our 2022 season, unless we think of something else that we need to talk about in another future episode. But that wraps it up for here, and we're looking forward to another brand new year.
Yep, absolutely.